Gorham in my phone. Woo! All right, guys, it is Sunday night, and that means it's Sunday night service. And I have got the one and only Mindy Gorman-Plutzer here with me tonight. Guys, I have been waiting so long to get her on here. And as soon as you get logged on, I need you to hit your heart buttons, hit your like buttons. Tell us where you're from. Whoops, my Facebook just came on. Tell us where you're from and put your questions in the comment, because tonight is going to be a little bit different than what I've normally done here. You know, this is a pretty heavy-hearted topic. It can be, but Mindy is going to make this to where there's a lot of hope in this conversation that we're having today, right? And Mindy, I'm thrilled to death to have you here. Thank you for being
here. Dani, well, first of all, thank you, number one, for your friendship and your faith in me to bring me to your amazing community. So I am really thrilled to be here, and you know how much this work I do means to me. So to be able to share it and continue to pay it forward is what I'm all about.
I'm so excited. And guys, while you're logging on, tell us again where you're from. Share it, heart buttons, all the things. And I'm going to tell you a short little blurb about Mindy. And then we literally are going to get straight into this and dig deep into disordered eating disorders, recovery, all the things that go around it. So Mindy, she brings 25 years of experience to her private practice as a certified functional nutrition and lifestyle practitioner. And she's also a certified eating psychology coach. Her life experience and training inspired her to create a framework that combines functional nutrition, positive psychology, and mind-body science, introducing a compassionate resolution to physical and emotional challenges resulting from chronic and complex health issues as they are related to eating disorders. She's the author of the incredible book, The Freedom Promise, which you all are going to have to get, 7 steps to stop fearing what food will do to you and start embracing what it can do for you. Mindy, I can't wait. I can't wait for you to share your journey, your story, and what you do. Tonight, we're going to talk about blocks to recovery, what blocks our recovery, right? We're going to talk about her 7-step recovery program called Freedom, which is her signature framework. And we're going to share about disordered eating to eating disorders to recovery, all tonight. But first, Mindy, I want you to give us some statistics. We talked this afternoon about statistics, and while people are still logging on, I'm going to check here on my phone and make sure everything's going well. It is. I want you to share some statistics with us, and then we're going to get into exactly how you got started and your story.
All right, well, these statistics are both alarming and sobering. Even I was totally blown away by these statistics when I came across them recently, having been in this eating disorder world, recovery world, for much of my life. I find it amazing that there are more than 30 million people in the United States alone that suffer from an eating disorder. 10 million of these individuals are men. But this is the part that really hurts my heart. 70% of those who admit to having experienced an eating disorder or disordered eating behaviors, and I really want to dive into that, at some point say they did not seek treatment of any kind. So think about the people that are in silence, right? Suffering and struggling in silence because it is such an isolating situation. But here's some more very interesting facts. 13% of women over the age of 50 have symptoms of an eating disorder. It's not just about adolescents. However, speaking of children, the rate of children under the age of 12 being admitted to a hospital for eating disorders rose 119% in less than a decade.
Say that one more time.
Okay. The rate of children under the age of 12 being admitted to a hospital for an eating disorder that's inpatient treatment has risen 119% in the last 10 years.
119%. So I told you this afternoon that a very good friend of mine, her daughter is 10 years old, 54 pounds, and was inpatient at Vanderbilt University for anorexia. She was withholding, eating. She was not eating anything. And 10 years old, inpatient for several weeks, and now is in a very intensive hybrid model, something outpatient. And yes,
good.
So, and that's interesting, because also the fastest rate of suicide growth is the 10 to 13 age range.
Yeah.
10 to 13. And I work with suicide prevention. And so that should tell us something. That is not such a little red flag popping up. That is a massive roadblock popping up that people are not paying attention to.
Yeah, well, to that point, eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any mental illness. One person dying every hour as the direct result of an eating disorder.
Really?
Yeah. But what's important for other people to know, whether they're caregivers or they suspect that somebody might be suffering from an eating disorder because of the behaviors they're seeing, what we have to educate the world to understand is that not everybody who suffered from an eating disorder is underweight, right? So only 35% of people with binge eating disorder, and I'll be very happy to go through all the various disorders with you and our audience, but 35% of binge eating disorder people are considered medically obese. So that means 65% are not. And 30% of bulimia patients, those are people who binge but then purge, only 30% are considered medically obese. It's the third most chronic illness, eating disorders, and particularly anorexia, the third most chronic eating disorder among adolescents after asthma and obesity.
Wow.
But let's talk about a good statistic.
Okay, let's talk about it.
80%, up to 80% of patients who receive and complete treatment will recover or certainly improve significantly. And that's where we come into this. How can we create an environment, a healthcare environment, where there is lasting and sustainable recovery?
Okay. How do we do that?
We do that by understanding that the eating disorder is not the problem. The eating disorder starts out as a solution. You see, people who have suffered from trauma, whether it's big T or little t, people that have received messages that are somehow dysfunctional or disordered, very often learn early in life, as I did, and I'm very happy to share my story, that their needs aren't important. That perhaps in order to survive the environment, it's best just to be quiet, stay out of the way, not ask for too much. But needs need to be expressed. And the expression, the body keeps the score. So what isn't expressed in the way of feelings and emotion are going to show up in other ways. They show up as symptoms, but very often they show up as behaviors. Eating disorder behaviors, restricting or binging, overeating, compulsively restricting, or the human way of surviving what we feel we can't tolerate. Restricting is about maybe making a statement that, I don't have needs, so I don't need anybody because people are going to disappoint me, hurt me. If I don't need anybody, then I don't need food. And then the person who is overeating is very often expressing the fact that they're just doing so to numb, distract, and avoid. I digress. Dani, I hear a little bit of an echo. Would you like me to put in a mic?
If you want to, yes. I hear it. I hear it on. Do you hear it on my end? Because I don't hear it.
I only hear when I speak. So I'm sorry. Just bear with me.
That's okay. Guys, while she's doing that, I need you to go to thefreedompromise.com when we get off of here. I'll show that right there. Take a picture of that so you don't forget it. Her website is unbelievable. She just did a whole overhaul of the website. There's her email address down there as well. Yes, she has an incredible website, and she has an amazing story that she's going to share with us right here in a second. Okay,
let's see if this is better. Is this better?
I think it is better. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I apologize. Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. So my story.
Yes.
I grew up in what really was a very loving home, but it was complicated. I was born to parents that were mere children themselves. My mother was 18 when I was born. My father was 21. And both of them had basically married at 17 and 20 to escape their own dysfunction. So there were issues, let's just say. And by the time I was 6, I was the oldest of 3. And when my youngest sister was born, after 9 months, she was diagnosed with a genital illness that did not have a good prognosis. So the cloud that settled over the family was really dark and foreboding. And given the fact that my parents had issues of their own, not the best coping mechanism by any means, as I related before, I learned to stay out of the way, not ask for too much, and be a really, really good little girl. And it was also a situation where I really didn't know who I was coming home to in the afternoon. There were certainly adverse childhood experiences, let's just say. We don't have time to go into all of it, but it was a question of me learning to figure out how to stay safe. I didn't feel very secure, but at the same time, my parents having their own weight issues, dieting became a family affair. And in my own way, I think it was my bonding with this mother whose approval was so very important to me.
Yes.
Right. So by the time I was 13 and my body started changing and I started developing the curves that happen in puberty, I was also getting messages about beauty and how important it was to be beautiful. The image that you put forth to the world was so much more important, really, than anything else. It was what people saw that really mattered. I never learned about what you were. It was about what you needed to do to be the best you could be, not about being what was important to be the best you could be. And that's an important part about my recovery and the work that I do now. So I want you to remember that. So anyway, we went on all these diets, and it was the 60s and the 70s. And so it was the Stillman diet and the cabbage soup diet and the Atkins diet. And of course, calorie counting. And being that I had become so attached to control, for me, it was the calories that really, really, that I really became attached to. And it became a game. How few calories I could eat in any given day. And then it became about how few calories I could eat at any meal, and how few calories had I ingested by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And mind you, as I was getting older and more responsible in my adult years, I couldn't even manage a checkbook, but I could tell you to the nth degree about the amount of calories I had. And I just want to throw in a caveat here. Not everybody who goes on a diet is going to develop an eating disorder. However, I have never met somebody with an eating disorder that didn't start with a diet.
Ooh, good point.
All right. So I don't want to give a message there that if you are engaging in some sort of a supervised weight loss program, you're going to develop an eating disorder. We can make sure you don't. But I just needed to say that. All right. So fast forward. I married very young, and married at 21. Had my first daughter at 22, my second at 24. And I always had these disordered eating behaviors in the back of my mind. It was always about the diet. It was always about how thin I could be. It was always about the image. In fact, I tell the story all the time that as a young married woman, when I would go visit my mother, I would wear control top pantyhose under my jeans because it was so important to me that I present myself in such a way. It really had become about the size of my thighs, the number on the scale. Again, so now I'm going to take you to my 30s. By the end of my 30s, my weight had hit a dangerous low point. My daughters were teenagers. Their relationship with food and their bodies was becoming alarming. My husband was vacillating between resenting me and blaming himself.
Sure.
And I decided I needed to get some help. So I went to see our family physician. He introduced me to a therapist that specialized in eating disorders. Together, they sent me to a registered dietitian. So essentially, I was being told what I needed to weigh, what I needed to think, and what I needed to eat. Nobody was touching on what I was really hungry for. It was about what I needed to do to be recovered. Nobody was helping me to understand what it meant to be recovered. You see, recovery from anything, the definition of recovery is to regain what is lost or taken, right? Recovery is relational. It's about relationship to self, which is reflected in our relationship to everything else. So I had no understanding of that. But here I was, the good little girl, going to the doctor, going to the therapist, trying to engage in this food plan that really was absurd. It was so much food, unrealistic for me, unsustainable. And I got advice, well, have 2 glasses of wine with dinner. It'll help you relax. And then came the antidepressants and the Zen. So I was on this trajectory of doing all I could do to be this good little recovered girl. And you know what? I was doing okay. I really was. I was doing okay. My marriage was in a good place. My daughters were growing to be wonderful young women, and all was right in the world. And then in my late 40s, the rug was pulled out from under me. My husband was diagnosed with metastatic melanoma, and the prognosis was dire. And that sent me into the downward spiral of all of my addictive behaviors. Plus, I found comfort in a daily bottle of wine. And I lost my husband in August of 2004. And by 2005, 2006, took me really to see my way out of it, get my sea legs back. And I realized I had a choice. I could either stay buried in the darkness, or I could embrace the light and be a woman that I and my now grown daughters could be proud of. So I went back to school. I became a certified health coach. Through that program, I found the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. I fell in love with the concept of learning who I was as an eater, how I was eating, why I was eating, when I was eating or not, really allowed me to take that deep dive to explore all of the issues that really were so relational for me. And then I discovered functional medicine.
Yes.
Functional medicine, all systems of the body matter. They're all connected. Every body is unique. And that's when I realized that what was going on in my body, the symptoms that I was feeling, the messages that I was receiving as a result of all of my behaviors were affecting my psychology. And the Freedom Promise was born.
And the rest is history. Wow. So wow. In 25 years, you've been helping people recover.
Yeah.
You've been recovered. You know, I heard you say today, I was watching a podcast you were on, and you said, I journeyed from disordered eating to eating disorders to recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that amazing and just beautiful. And you've helped so many people through the last two and a half decades. Now, and your daughters and you all, everyone's healthy now.
My daughters are amazing women. They each have a very healthy relationship with food and their bodies, and they are imparting that on their children, my grandchildren. I just want to say something about my 25 years of experience. I started out 25 years ago. Actually, it's almost 26, was 1995, really when I was embarking on my recovery journey, working for a local dietitian. And I had, gotten a certification in holistic nutrition by that point. But this practice that I was engaged in was basically a weight loss practice. And what I was doing essentially was just helping people make their bodies go away. And it felt so disingenuous to me. And I actually left there after a few years. It wasn't a healthy environment for me. And I went out on my own, and I really created quite a following. And then that's when my husband got sick, and I shut the door and I stopped everything. It was after he passed in 2004 that I pursued the certifications in health coaching and everything that followed. So the work I'm doing now with eating disorder recovery really came to be more like 8 years ago, when I was able to marry the functional nutrition piece with the eating psychology coaching. Because what I was seeing, people walking into my practice, was that the conventional treatment model was not serving them. The biological piece was not being addressed. It wasn't being honored. People were being told, well, in order to prove that you're fully recovered, you've got to eat everything. Well, you know something? And I know you know this, but I want our audience to know this, that after years of restricting, binging, and purging, your gut microbiome is not healthy. And that, in effect, is affecting your cognition, how you're thinking. Yes. And you're going to have symptoms when you are told to eat certain foods. That has to be honored. I don't believe in an all foods fit philosophy. I don't believe that everybody needs to eat everything for the rest of their lives to be healthy. I believe that we can learn to trust our bodies, trust our symptoms, to eat intuitively, but to do so, you need to trust your intuition. So that's where I created the Freedom Promise. It is this 7-step program that marries functional medicine, nutrition, with eating psychology.
Let's talk about that then, since we're already right into that. Let's talk about that. And then I want to talk about blocks to recovery and
absolutely.
Things like that. But let's go ahead and talk about your 7 steps to recovery, because it's fascinating.
Okay, well, the 7 steps really happened organically. And they're an acronym for freedom. So step 1 is find your enough, face your feelings, and feel the love. And the feel the love piece is really all about gratitude. When we are operating from a space of gratitude, we're living in a mindset of abundance. There's no fear. Finding your enough is a major, major part of feeling worthy. It has nothing to do with self-esteem. Self-esteem is about your job, where you live, what the world sees. Worthiness is your God-given birthright, that you are deserving of every blessing that is on this blessed earth.
I tell patients that every day, and I'm a believer, so I always tell people, you are a child of the Most High King, and you are worthy of being 150%. You're worthy to be first, and the Bible tells you that. If you're Christian, the Bible tells you that, and you bet, worthiness is huge for women who feel they're not worthy, and everyone comes first but them. Everyone comes first but them.
You know,
put your oxygen mask on now, and let's nail this and get this taken care of. Yes, I believe. Thank you. I didn't know you were going to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. And you know, I say, while it's the first step, it's the ultimate goal, because if you don't find that enough, that worthiness, really live your life attached to the blessings that are your birthright, then you know what? That freshly baked brownie, that new pair of shoes, that glass of 2 of wine, not going to do it for you. So that's step one. Step two, R in freedom, rest and digest. So this speaks to the stress response, how important it is for us to be in a parasympathetic state chronically, as opposed to a sympathetic state where it's a fight, flight, or freeze. Yes. I teach the science of stress, and also understanding that when we are stressed, when we're in that sympathetic state, our digestion shuts down. So we're not digesting, we're not absorbing, we're not assimilating, we're not metabolizing. But I'm going to take that a step further. When we are in that sympathetic state, not only is it not that we're digesting, absorbing, assimilating, and metabolizing food, we're not digesting, absorbing, assimilating, and metabolizing life.
That's right.
Okay. Step 3, eat when you're hungry, stop when you're not. So here I teach the difference between physical hunger and stress hunger, emotional hunger, what I refer to as heart hunger, head hunger. I don't prescribe to the concept of emotional eating, and I'll talk about that. I believe that there's stress eating. I believe that there is compulsive overeating, but I am a proponent of bringing emotion to the table. I think we all need to eat with emotion as opposed to eating so as not to feel it. So You're not going to hear me talk about emotional eating. So eat when you're hungry, stop when you're not. Step 4, eat mindfully. Bring mindfulness to the table so you can bring your best self to the table, your best self to the table of life. Engage your senses. Make it about the eating experience. And when you're eating mindfully, even so much as saying grace before the meal, it slows you down. It puts you in a parasympathetic state. It allows you to stop when you've had enough because you're in touch with the wisdom of your body.
Yes.
Step 5, do something every day to make your body feel alive. And this is one of my favorite steps, where in this step we deal with body image, but more importantly, we deal with the importance of honoring your body with movement, as opposed to punishing it with exercise that's designed to make it go away or to compensate for something that you perceive you have eaten too much of. Bodies need to move. We need to feel alive. And that movement has to be appropriate. It has to be appropriate for you, where you are in your health journey, where you are in your food journey, in your recovery journey, not what some influencer on social media is telling you you need to do in order to have the body of your dreams. Because truthfully, the body of your dreams is most likely not realistic. I often use this analogy. If you had a size 8 foot and you were trying to get that foot into a size 6 shoe, how irrational is that? Yeah. So in step 5, we learn to accept and honor our bodies for the exquisiteness that they are. Right now, even if you've got weight to lose, whether it's 5, 10, 50, or 100 pounds, let's work together to find out what's so exquisite about you right now. Oh, only eat whole foods as often as you can. So this is the Nutrition 101 piece. But what I like to point out in this 7-step framework is that out of 7 steps, only 1 is about food. Because our relationship with food in our bodies is more about our relationship to self. That is reflected in our relationship with food, but it's about our relationship to who we are as eaters. And finally, the 7th step, make sure you surround yourself with what truly nourishes, because what truly nourishes us is not in the kitchen. It's our purpose, it's our relationships, it's our movement, it's our spirituality. And those are the 7 steps to food freedom.
And Carrie just said it best, the power of community, which is my 6th step to healing, is cultivate community. And that's true. Mindy, as long as I've known you, I didn't know this. You just explained that beautifully, your 7 steps. I mean, that's key. Key. Whoa. Okay. So that's her 7 steps. And we're going to share a little bit about that a little bit later on how you too can get connected and learn from Mindy. But these are the steps. This is your freedom signature, framework. But what are some roadblocks? Let's talk about that. What gets people caught up?
Okay.
Trips them up. What are the roadblocks?
The first one is what we mentioned before, worthiness. Not feeling deserving of taking care of ourselves. And I'd like to take a little bit of a dive into what self-care is all about. Very often we think, well, if we're going to the gym or we're getting manicures or massages, then we are engaging in self-care. There are really 4 aspects to self-care. There's physical self-care, where you need to listen to the symptoms that are calling for your attention, get yourself the proper health care, have the wherewithal, the confidence in yourself to go for a second opinion, to listen to what your body is telling you about what you need to do. That's physical self-care. Of course, there's hygiene and all of that. Emotional self-care is when we pay attention to our feelings, when we don't stifle them, when we don't eat in order to numb, avoid, and distract the feelings that we deem intolerable, to understand that the only way out is through, as Robert Frost said, to understand that behaviors are our psyche's way of expressing what needs to be expressed. We don't need to be happy all the time. That is a fallacy.
Yes.
It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be disappointed. And very often when we're feeling helpless, behaviors and more aggressive, active emotions come out. We need to honor that. We need to accept that we're human. And then the 4th kind of self-care that I think is very important and, of course, appropriate to where we are tonight is spirituality. Realizing that we're part of something greater than we are. And spirituality can look different for everybody. For some, it's an all-knowing being. For some, it's a higher power. For some, it's the universe. For some, it's their deepest sense of self. But there is something greater than all of us that is calling for us to be better than what we are, to turn the page on what's no longer serving us. That's self-care. So that's the first block.
Physical, emotional, spirituality, but I missed the third one.
Mental, I'm sorry. Mental is taking care of our brain health, right?
Yes.
To engage in activities that keep us sharp and healthy and make sure that we're feeding our bodies mindfully so that our brains benefit as well. People don't realize that our brains are made up of glucose and
Yes.
essential fats,
Yes.
right? Essential because if we don't have them, we die. And when
That's
we're
right.
severely restricting, we're starving our brains. I can share with you, when I was severely restricting, I couldn't think straight. I will never forget in my recovery journey when I finished a novel for the first time in years, because I just didn't have the capacity to concentrate on anything other than what I was eating or what I wasn't eating. And that's because my brain was starving. When you're thinking about food all the time, it's because you're starving. It's not all psychological. It's very physical. There's a huge biological component to this that we can't forget. So that's block one. The second is a biggie. It's an unwillingness, an inability. And when I say unwillingness and inability, I do not mean to infer that you're lazy or you're a bad or an imperfect person. It's difficult to sit through the discomfort of what you have decided is too hard for you to face. As I said before, eating disorders, disordered eating is not the problem. It started out as a solution.
That's right.
And that's very, very important for you to know for yourself and those you love. So to sit through the discomfort and not reach for the pint of ice cream, not go out to the bodega to buy what you need to buy, not stop at the bakery on your way home from work, not come home from work and open a bottle of wine. Sit with your feelings. Let them pass.
Mm.
So that's a very important block. Third block is mindset. I referred before in my first step about a mindset of abundance. When we're living in a mindset of abundance, it's about gratitude, it's about empowerment, it's about taking back our personal power. It's about being aligned with our spirituality, the spirituality that speaks to us best. The other side of that is a mindset of scarcity. Mindset of scarcity is rooted in fear, but it shows up as deprivation. It shows up with food behaviors as restriction. It shows up as needing to rely on willpower. And it is a major block to recovery and a major block to growth of any kind. And finally, the fourth block ties it all together because it's about consistency. It's about staying attached, staying on the path. And yes, there will be days that we get tired. We take 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I like to think of that as doing a dance rather than failure. Failure means not trying. Failure doesn't mean having an imperfect day. Staying consistent, learning to listen to the wisdom of your body, learning to quiet the noise in your head, eliminate the clutter. That's how you develop trust.
That's right. And day in and day out, one foot in front of the other, like you said. And when you said sit with the pain, whoa, sit with your feelings. When I was getting divorced, I was going through a really nasty divorce at home. I'd had an affair. There were all kinds of messes happening in my hometown. Oh my gosh, it was awful. I got the divorce, but I was reeling. There were lots of things happening. I went to Indonesia to study yoga with Rodney Yee. And I took it, this was 19 years ago. And I'm in Bali. And Rodney knew what was going on. He was my teacher here in the States for yoga. And he said to me, you have to sit on your mat with the pain, day in, day out, like an onion. Let it flow. Feel it. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to suffer. It's okay. Peel it one layer at a time. It could take you decades, Dani, to get over this. And I'll never forget that. Sit with the pain. Feel the pain. I've always said, like with a broken heart, nobody wants a broken heart, but I've never shy away from that because that hurt lets me know I'm alive.
Yes. Oh,
but it's beautiful. What you do with that,
Yeah.
I suppose.
No, it's very true. It's about, I don't want to sound like a basket of cliches, but the truth is that, we all have a story.
Yes.
We are a result of our story where we identify by our story. We're attached to our story. And there are parts of our story that no longer serve. What served us at one point in our lives, perhaps we get to a point where it no longer serves. Well, again, I'm very visual and I use analogy and metaphor a lot. Think of the story book. You either have to close the book and put it on a shelf. The story will always be your story, but can't keep rereading it. Another way to look at it, and I use this a lot with my clients, is turning the page on the story. Get to a blank page where you can start to write what will become your happily ever after. We have that opportunity every day. With food, we have that opportunity with every meal. We have that opportunity constantly. Every day that we get to open our eyes and embrace the world, we have an opportunity to be one step closer to the person we want to be.
Yes.
But it takes letting go. It takes letting go of who we think we are, who we think we need to be, letting go of the behaviors that we started to rely on to get us to this point, which is why I say transformation, true transformation, is less about what we do to change and more about what we let go of in order to be the change.
Transformation is less of what we do, but more of what we let go of.
To be the change, yes. And that's before we alluded to the fact that I said I was doing recovery as opposed to being recovered. Yeah, I was going through all the motions of recovery. I was eating my 3 meals and my 2 snacks. I was showing up for my weigh-ins and I was showing up for therapy. And yeah, I was telling the therapist things that I thought she wanted to hear. But I was still so detached from my sense of self. Good, bad, and ugly. It was not until I realized that I had personal power to reclaim that I could start being recovered. And that I could honor the fact that I was going to have triggers and I could manage them. I wasn't going to be thrown into a tailspin. And to this day, I am triggered. To this day. But I know what I need to do and I know how I want to feel. And that's empowering. And that's why I consider myself recovered. And that's why I coach and I teach sustainable recovery. It's lasting recovery. It's about who we are, not what we do.
And I believe you walk the walk on what you just said right there. Because again, I listened to a podcast, another one of you today, and the girl said, who was interviewing you, said, I struggle every day. And I don't know what her disordered eating is. And we need to talk about that before we end this too. Yeah. She said, I struggle every day, don't you? And you were as calm as you are right now. And you said, no, I don't. I feel recovered. And she was a little bit taken aback. And I believe that you are recovered, but you have triggers and you now know the tools, you have the tools to be able to get through that. Let's talk about disordered eating versus eating disorders. Are they different or are they the same?
All right. they're different.
Okay.
I also think it depends on the clinician you're talking to, the practitioner you're talking to. Okay, so technically, probably in the DSM, disordered eating is distinguished from a full-blown eating disorder when it's all about degree, right? An individual with disordered eating is often engaged in some of the same behavior as those with full-blown eating disorders, but at a lesser frequency or lower level of severity, right? It's very problematic. It needs to be taken seriously, but the symptoms might not be as extreme and as consequential as those of a diagnosable eating disorder. So there will be self-worth based on body shape and weight, disturbance in the way one experiences their body, a person who falls into a healthy weight range but continues to feel that they're overweight, excessive or rigid exercise routine, obsessive calorie counting, anxiety, confusion, fear about certain foods. That's how I came to my tagline of fearing what food will do to you rather than embracing what it can do for you. A very rigid approach to eating, only eating certain foods. And then again, fearing carbs, fearing fats, being under the influence, more or less, of some misinformation that is driven by a misguided belief system. And I believe that there is a huge factor of the population, and this is why it's so important to discuss this, that is going down that rabbit hole, that is so influenced by social media, that is so influenced by everything outside of themselves to eat this, don't eat that, move this way rather than that way, that they lose sight of that exquisite wisdom of their bodies and fall down that rabbit hole of diet culture, where they become more and more less trustful of their bodies, less trustful of their true hungers. And finally, what happens is a person who's engaging in disordered eating like this is going to start denying hunger, is going to rely on willpower, is going to be afraid of his or her hunger because they come to not trust that they can stop when they've had enough. And I think this is a pervasive problem in our society today. I know there's a lot of talk about intuitive eating and health at every size in the eating disorder recovery community. But from my purview, where I sit, we can't engage in intuitive eating until we have a sense of our own intuition. And that's what gets lost when we stop listening.
Whoa, that's powerful, because intuitive eating is a big trend right now.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of patients going through that. Okay, so that's the difference between those two.
And it's funny because for some people, intuitive eating is just another diet.
Yes,
right?
and let's talk about all the eating disorders that are out there that people may not even think is an eating disorder or a disordered eating style. Let's talk about that.
Okay, well, we know that there's anorexia nervosa, which is characterized by severe restricting of calories, severe restricting of food groups. Very often people struggling with anorexia nervosa, and I say anorexia nervosa because it is categorized as a mental illness. They're usually less than 85% of their ideal body weight. Usually, remember I said before, you can be of normal body weight because you can have anorexic thoughts, having an irrational fear of what food will do to you. So anorexia, again, is characterized by severe restricting. Then we have bulimia nervosa, which is characterized by periods of binge eating, excessive overeating, driven by an urge to basically, as I said before, numb, avoid, and distract from what is deemed intolerable. And people with bulimia nervosa will engage in compensation by using laxatives, vomiting, or excessive exercise. to compensate for the eating binge. So very often bulimia nervosa is accompanied in most cases with severe restricting as well to make up for the binge episodes. People can describe a binge episode basically as being totally out of it, being in a food coma.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's binge eating disorder, which is all the characteristics of bulimia without the purging. So needless to say, with each of these disorders, there are very serious physical consequences.
Yes. Yes.
Very physical and psychological consequences, a lot of comorbidities. And then you have there's another eating disorder called ARFID, which is avoidance restrictive food intake disorder. Very often people who struggle with ARFID have suffered some sort of trauma. It could have been from choking. It could have been from a terrible vomiting experience. There could be a sensory issue involved.
Oh.
But ARFID is very real, and it is now characterized as an eating disorder. Not as common, but nonetheless, it's an eating disorder. So that's why I said before, very often disordered eating behaviors mimic the characteristics of some of these more severe clinically diagnosed eating disorders, but to a lesser severity. And very often, in my experience, personally and professionally, it's driven by misinformation by diet culture, misinformation by social media that has taken us just down a rabbit hole. And look, and the truth is, I have to say, in defense of my own colleagues, there are a lot of practitioners out there who are extremely dogmatic about certain therapeutic protocols, and without realizing that putting somebody on a therapeutic protocol for a very, very long period of time indefinitely is going to create nutritional deficiencies. And these therapeutic protocols, although starting with the best intentions for healing and recovery, can create disordered eating because the patient then fears, again, what food will do to them if they go off this protocol. I see it all the time with people struggling with SIBO and being put on certain therapeutic protocols. I see it very often with autoimmune protocols. People are afraid to go off these protocols. So it takes empathy, it takes compassion, it takes a practitioner who gets it, and it takes somebody who is really willing to walk with you so that you can ultimately become the master of your own healing. You are the expert of your experience, but you need somebody to take you to that next step so that you can become fully empowered, take your power back, and become the master of your own healing.
Do you all see why I love her? You can't see all the hearts going up on Be Live, but I'm watching my Facebook over here as well on my phone, and it's just like, woo, one heart after another flowing up. I mean, we have touched a nerve tonight, and I knew that this would be emotional. I knew that this would be very personal to a lot of people. I mean, the hearts are just flying, Mindy. You'll see it when you rewatch this. Guys, I would love to have Mindy back on here, us talking about, I was on Mindy's summit. She did an incredible summit. And I don't know, is that still available? Like, can they?
No, unfortunately, only if you had bought the,
Yes.
All Access VIP pass. But I will share with you that what I'm working on now is I'm working on, I'll be doing Facebook Lives on a regular basis. What I'm trying to do is figure out for me, because I'm a technical dinosaur, how to deliver them in the most beneficial way. And my friend Dani here is going to help me do that. I know I'm going to call on her to help me do that.
So what you do is I don't know if you can see me, you pick your phone up and you do just like this, and you just go live, and you just be real, and you just laugh like we did today on Instagram, right?
Right.
I just picked it up and said, here we go. But listen, guys, we're going to have Mindy back on, because I did an interview with her on adverse childhood experiences. I talked about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and eating disorders. I thought it was fascinating. Now, I don't know if you thought it was fascinating, but what I learned from that research was unbelievable. And would you love to come back and do this and talk about the trauma?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh,
So if
sure.
you all want that,
Anytime.
if you all want Mindy to come back, for sure hit your heart buttons right now. But Mindy, let's bring it on home with you telling them anything you want to say right now, anything you want to say, and how they can get in touch with you, how they can, everything, how you can work with Mindy. Because I want to tell you, I've sent patients to Mindy. I know how good she is. I don't bring people on here that I don't put my trust in, for sure. And yes, the hearts are flying like crazy. Number one, to come back. Number two, yes, number one, come back. Oh, and ACEs are huge, and they play such a part in our long-term health. Yes, they do, Deanna. Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. And however, we can grow from them. They do not define us. They're part of our story. But I'm a big believer in something known as post-traumatic growth.
That's key. Post-traumatic growth.
Absolutely. And I'd love to come back, and I'd love to answer questions and just, as I said, I came to this work, Dani, you know this, to not only embrace my own recovery, but to pay it forward and to introduce a somewhat unconventional protocol to eating disorder recovery, because I've seen, as I said, I experienced it myself, and I see with the people I'm blessed to work with that the conventional protocols are not sustainable. They're not sustainable. They don't empower. They're anything but. They're disempowering because they're only dealing with behavior. And we as practitioners have to do so much more than just ask our patients and clients to change their behavior. We have to introduce to them the context within which these behaviors have evolved. We have to change the inner environment. You can't get well in the environment that's made you sick. So we need to till the soil, so to speak, and get to the root cause and look at how the roots have created branches. The branches are the symptoms. And together we will change the way we do recovery.
Yes. Tell them how they can get in touch with you.
Okay.
That was excellent. You can't get well in the environment that made you sick. Woo! That's huge.
The best way to get in touch with me is go to my website. I believe you can go to the contact. Yeah, go to the contact. You can set up a free 30-minute discovery call. I'd love to talk to you. If it's support you're looking for, one-on-one, we can talk about the best way that can work for you. If you're into self-learning, self-paced learning, I have some free resources. I have a free mini course, a 10-part mini course that just went up. I have a guide which really takes you deep into my 7 steps for food freedom. And I have a master class that really goes very deep into 3 of the steps, 1, 3, and 7. And I introduce you to 3 case studies. I have an online course, and I can share with this community for the first time that in the next week, my online course is having the price slashed in half. It was $9.97. It's going to $4.97. It's 8 modules. Each one is you have the welcome, and then each of the 7 steps. There are worksheets, workbooks, affirmations, action steps, journal questions. You get a journal, and you get an 1-hour consultation with me, so we can make sure that you really benefit from this self-study. So what I can tell you, community, is if you are interested in this course at the reduced price, watch the master class. I don't believe that the price was changed on that yet, but you have my word that it will be. Email me, and I will see that you get access to this course at the reduced price. I will grant you access at the reduced price. So don't tell anybody. Only for Dani's community until it goes public.
That's right. We have a good community. Yes, Rebecca, her Facebook page is the
Yes.
Freedom Promise.
Freedom Promise. Oh, and I have a Facebook group, the Freedom Promise Way. That and that's where I'll be teaching my classes, actually, in the Freedom Promise Way. And yeah.
Okay, I'm typing that in. Talk a little bit right now.
Okay, so yes, the Freedom Promise Way. The Freedom Promise Way is our Facebook community, and I love to have you there and love to have you engage. And it's really a wonderful community. It's made up of people struggling with eating disorders, people who just have a relationship of food that they feel is keeping them hostage. There are even practitioners in the group that want to learn how they can help their clients and patients. And it's really a wonderful, wonderful community. So
yes, because, you know, as a provider, I don't technically treat disordered eating or eating disorders, right? We work on healing the gut, but you know, you need someone who knows what they're doing. You need somebody walking along beside you, beside your healthcare provider, right? Beside your psychiatrist. I mean, they don't know. It takes to me, like I say this all the time when I'm talking to guests on here. The wounded warrior, the wounded provider is the best provider out there. And Mindy is the best when it comes to this because she was a wounded provider. I feel like, although my specialty is Hashimoto's, I don't have Hashimoto's, but you know, that seems to be why people come to see me, but it all stems from the gut, and the gut is where my issues are. So again, the wounded provider, if you really want a great provider, find the one who has struggled with your problems, because they're the ones who are willing to dig to the bottom.
Yeah, I didn't even share with our audience tonight that as a result of my disordered eating behaviors, my laxative abuse, we didn't talk about that. My gut was and continues to be a big problem for me. You know, there's blood sugar dysregulation, gut issues, and then of course there are hormone issues. So yeah, it's comprehensive. That's why I said before, that's why the functional medicine piece for me brought it all together. Every system of the body is connected.
You bet it is. You bet it is. Emotionally, spiritually, physically, sexually. I mean, it's all connected. Every system's connected. So, Mindy, everyone has loved this tonight. I am so excited. And guys, reach out to her. She is the real deal. I fell in love with her the minute I met her in Southern California. We were at a conference together and just clicked. I mean, she's an East Coast girl. I'm a Southern girl. And we just clicked. And we had dinner together a year ago this month. And that's the last time I've seen her. And we were in New York City. Well, I was in New York City. She lives there. And we had a great dinner together. And I'm so grateful for you. And we will have you back talking about adverse childhood experiences and disordered eating and the research behind all of that. And I'm so grateful for you tonight. And thank you. Don't go anywhere right now. We're going to talk right after this. But guys, listen, tonight ended the Sizzle Awards. So it's over and it's done. Have no clue if we won or not, but I am so grateful for every single one of you that voted. But next Sunday night, I have Farah Sultan on here. And we're going to be talking about balancing your hormones by balancing the gut, changing your nutrition, your stress, and your movement. She's excellent. And I can't wait for you all to learn from her. And it'll be our Sunday night service. As somebody mentioned on here, this is their favorite church service or something. I was laughing. Oh yeah, the best church service I've had. Well, there we go. That's what we try to do on Sunday night here. But next Sunday night, that's what we'll be talking about. Hormones, gut, movement, and stress. It's all connected. And if you live in Middle Tennessee, come see us. You know, we're at the office 6 days a week, for crying out loud. So come in and see our supplement store. We're getting ready to double the size of that and expand that. And we just have so much going on. And the book, will be really, oh, Mindy has a book too, by the way. Is your book on Amazon?
My book's on Amazon, The Freedom Promise. Yes.
The Freedom Promise on Amazon. Go order her book. You won't regret it. Guaranteed. This book, you need to order this when it comes out. You need to pre-order it in April, next month, when it goes up for pre-order on Amazon. Oh my Lord, I'm so excited. So there's just a few tweaks to be done. I've gotten multiple endorsements, JJ Virgin, and just multiple people. And Tyler Hubbard from Florida Georgia Line has, and his wife Haley just did an endorsement today. Dr. Anna Kabeka, Mindy did an endorsement. So all of that's, I am just really excited. It's coming out. It'll be out in November, but I am going to actually this week share my story, my 3-minute story that I'm working on Instagram. So I'm going to do an Instagram live with that. And so you guys are going to need to go follow me on Instagram. But Mindy, I thank you so much. Any final last words? We went over 7 minutes, but who cares? It's been great.
No, it's just always fills my heart to talk about this. And I just hope that I have instilled hope in those that need it. You know, we talk about sharing our experience, strength, and hope. And that's what this is all about. And you know what? I believe that I survived all that I did so that I could do this work. This was the greater good, the greater purpose, bigger than me. And
Isn't
I'm
that
so grateful.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I tell patients that every week. You know, I went through, I did not die by suicide like the day I had planned to do that. You know, I survived lupus and I survived a divorce and a horrible affair and just lots of things to be here today. That was not by accident, right? And our charge, if we survive things like that, is to get out there and pay it forward.
Exactly.
Because we didn't do it alone. That's for sure. So guys, I'm so excited and I cannot wait until Mindy comes back. We'll get that scheduled and we will talk about adverse childhood experiences and disordered eating and eating disorders, because that will be huge. Very important. I appreciate you, Mindy. I love you so much. Thank you. Mwah. Bye, guys. Have a good night. Meal prep. Get ready for tomorrow because it's going to be a fabulous week. Okay?